Supreme Court matters, where this morning lawyers in Nairobi held a peaceful march protesting what they've termed as impunity of the Constitution. The march began this morning at around 10 a.m. from the Milimani Law Courts, heading towards the Supreme Court. Our reporter Makori Ongechi is currently at the Supreme Court. Perhaps, Makori, you can bring us up to date on what was intended to be accomplished by this peaceful protest this morning, and also the events that took place on that march towards the Supreme Court this morning. Makori?
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Joy Mudhengi, back in studio. Like you've said, we're coming live to you from the Supreme Court here in Nairobi, where currently there is a special sitting going or underway behind this building, bringing together the lawyers that marched earlier from the Milimani Law Courts, protesting the what they said was the act of unconstitutionalism, where they say that the state has been on the forefront disobeying court orders. Well, part of what they raised earlier, Joy, is the issue regarding Miguna's case. Remember, there were several court orders that were issued to demanding that the NASA activist be presented in court, but they were not complied to. Also, top of the agenda was the issue of the requirement that the Inspector General appears before the court, but he failed to do so. So the lawyers were protesting what they say is the act of unconstitutionalism, where a section of government and other facts are failing to adhere to court orders. Now, currently, they are going on with a special sitting inside the Supreme Court. And briefly, I'll talk to one of the lawyers who was in that protest, that is Harun Ndubi, to tell us what is going on inside there, because it's just come outside out of that special gathering. Maybe Mr. Ndubi, briefly tell us what are the discussions that are going inside this building.
Well, as lawyers, we have realized that lately there is an increasing number of orders of court being disobeyed by different cadres of government, especially the highest echelons of government, and also individuals or political parties, even acts of contempt against the judiciary generally. So that the conversation we are having here is, what does the law society or we as lawyers do with these actions of impunity, which sometimes happen with lawyers advising or assisting those clients? Because remember, both sides usually have lawyers, and yet as lawyers we also ought to hold fidelity of the law.
So what is probably the intention of this particular meeting? What are you targeting or intending to achieve?
This conversation is having we are challenging ourselves as to what forms of disobedience and impunity are we seeing coming from especially government, because you remember that the people in government are the ones who take oaths of office and swear to protect the Constitution and obey the law. Citizens do not take such oath, so that we must distinguish the difference between a citizen disobeying a court order, either by himself or with active assistance of a lawyer, and a public officer disobeying a court order when that public officer has always sworn to protect the law, to uphold the Constitution, and uphold the rights, the law generally, and court orders are part of the law in the country. Okay. So our conversation is, what steps are we going to take, and resolutions are going to emerge from here today, which will be taken forward to the Council of the Law Society and the LSK generally, on what lawyers can do to ensure that they advise both government, political parties, and citizens on what to do in terms of obeying the law, because there is this trend where some parties are now threatening to disobey the law because government is disobeying the law. That will send the country into total anarchy.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, Joey, that is, we are following closely the conversation that is underway, and we'll probably be able to get the resolutions that are coming up and share with our viewers later on. Back to you, Joey.
Thank you very much, Makori, at the Supreme Court for us there, reporting live. And now to Parliament. Now, the Senate ICT Committee has required ICT Cabinet Secretary Joe Mucheru to appear before it on Monday next week to face summons. The CS, who wrote to the Senate seeking excusal not to appear today, is required to, amongst other things, respond to why they switched off 4 TV stations earlier this month. Our reporter Sam Gituku is at Parliament grounds. Sam, perhaps you can tell us what the mood is at the committee on learning that the CS would not be appearing today.
Good afternoon, Joy. Yes, the Cabinet Secretary for ICT, Joe Musheru, did not turn up. He had been expected to be before the committee at about 11 o'clock, but 30 minutes into the hour, he was a no-show. So what was received by the interim chair, the chair of the session, that is Aaron Cheruiyot, the Senator for Kericho, is that there's a letter that has come from the ICT Ministry, from the PS of Joe Musheru, indicating that the CS would be attending to cabinet matters, bearing in mind that today, Thursday, is a cabinet day. So he says that he's not able to appear today, and also indicating that he'll be traveling out of the country on the 19th of February. That is to do with Monday next week, and he should be coming back on 26th. So the senators were infuriated, obviously, because they were saying that they were invited, the CS was invited to appear before the committee way before today. He had been given adequate notice, so saying that he's not able to appear on the same day because the letter just came in today. They are saying that he is contemptuous of the ICT committee as a body that is supposed to be oversighting the affairs of the ministry. And so basically what he was expected to respond to is the reason as to why the ministry, in collaboration with the Interior Ministry, they went ahead to switch off 4 TV stations, talking about NTV, Citizen TV, KTN News, as well as Inoro TV. So those are the questions that he was supposed to respond, as well as why the directive by the president indicating that the Universal Service Fund, that is a fund that is contributed to by the telecommunication companies to the extent of ensuring that there's network coverage across the country. So that Universal Service Fund has been moved to the DCI according to the presidential directive. He was supposed to respond to that, as well as to respond to questions why the dominance by Safaricom as a telco in the industry. But now the responses from that can only be gotten on Monday, on the same day that the ICT CS is supposed to be traveling out of the country. So it is a question of wait and see if the CS will eventually appear before the committee come Monday, or he will give priority to his travel outside the country. Joy.
Many thanks, Sam Gituku there.